Hi, my name is Andy Nicholls. I'm a Brighton-based film and TV producer, director, and our friends at Brighton Fringe have asked me to put together a few hints and tips for anyone looking to put their Fringe event online this year with minimal or no budget. Joining me today is an actor friend of mine, Rob Leach, calling in from South London. Rob played the lead role in a short film I made here in Brighton back in 2010 called Straight Out. And Rob, who is an award-winning creator in his own right, runs his own YouTube channel now called Smartphone Filmmaker, where he looks at getting the best out of filming with a smartphone. So I've been helping to set up the new Ironworks Studio space near Brighton Station. It's a venue that will be available for Fringe events this year and features a theatre space with over 150 seats, and it's geared up specifically for filming and streaming events. I normally produce all the live video for Brighton Pride in Preston Park, but with COVID closing down all events over the last year, I produced the 12-hour live stream event for Brighton Pride from these very studios. On my own YouTube channel, I cover a lot of camera and technical topics, including a lot of behind-the-scenes footage on how we put together shows like the Brighton Pride We Are Fabuloso event. So if that's something that interests you, here's a link to my channel below. We use fully professional broadcast cameras and equipment in the studio to put together live multi-camera events to a very high standard, and that of course comes with a budget. But even the most simple smartphones these days have cameras built in that can give really good results when used skillfully. So Rob, tell us about the Smartphone Filmmaker channel and how that all came about.
Sure, yeah. So basically, I'm an actor, and in between gigs, you can have quite a lot of time off. So I want to stay creative, and realizing that with my phone, you can actually shoot in 4K, like short films that I've been in. I thought, oh, well, you must be able to make short films with phones. So I started going on YouTube, searching iPhone films, smartphone films, anything to do with that, and started learning about how people were making them, and actually finding out that you can make really great films and projects on a phone really cheap, and started doing film festivals, that kind of thing as well. And then I made the YouTube channel so I could document my journey with that and learning about how to use accessories, that kind of thing, how to use lighting, all sorts with your phone, and how to make something on a very, 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 and believe me, very low budget that actually is really entertaining and can capture the audience as well. And now it's been going for about 7 months, and that's Smartphone Filmmaker YouTube channel.
And you're no stranger to Brighton Fringe, are you? You've taken part in several events.
Yes, I've done the Brighton Fringe. I've done that twice, actually. One with a show that I wrote. We took to the Marlborough Little Theatre. Oh, that's probably about 10, 15 years ago now. It went really well. Did a couple of nights there. Really a lot of fun. And also I did the Edinburgh Fringe with a play that I wrote called One to One, This Sex is Real, about modern dating and the troubles that come with it. We took that to Edinburgh Fringe, and it's a really good experience. It's amazing to take something that you created yourself and put it in front of an audience.
So what apps do you use on a smartphone to create your films?
Well, basically, I researched on YouTube how people are making their films, and I found an app called Filmic Pro, which is about £15 on your app store. And it's a professional tool that filmmakers have used to make feature films as well, that are even on Netflix, like High Flying Bird. There's Tangerine, which is a really great film made by Sean Baker on an iPhone 5. And yeah, you can use your native app as well. A lot of people do that if you've got certain phones, especially if you've got one of the newer phones as well. Some of them you can actually make it 24 frames per second, so you can make it more filmic. Or you can just use the app on an older phone as well, and you can edit that with iMovie and things as well. So you can make things pretty professional. But for me, Filmic Pro is the one that I use mainly.
Do you find that the small lenses on a smartphone constrain what you can do creatively?
For the most part, yes. You've got, depending on what phone you have, I've got an iPhone 8 that I'm using for this. So that's just got a regular lens. But if you've got an iPhone, I think it's 11, 12, and a lot of Android phones, well, the newer ones, might have a wide lens. You might have a telephoto lens, which is really good if you're doing like a monologue or something like that, where you can kind of bring you more to the audience and maybe blur the background a little bit. You can get external lenses as well. So I use a anamorphic lens sometimes, like for my short film on my channel called Broken Zen. So that kind of stretches out the shot a little bit, so you get more of a landscape feel, and it feels a bit more people say cinematic. It kind of has that type of feel if you're watching something a bit more modern. But basically, you can either get external ones, which can range up to about 175, £200, or you can just use the lens that's on your phone, and that's perfectly fine. I've used the lens on my phone for the majority of my short films, and no one has ever said, oh my God, this would look so much better if you had such and such lens. It's all about the story. If you've got a really good story, you can use any lens, and the native one on your phone is perfectly good for making pretty much anything, really.
So normally when I teach video, one of the things I say to people is that sound is even more important than the visuals. People will often put up with a slightly shaky, out of focus, dim or overexposed image as long as they can hear what's being said. But if you don't get good audio and you struggle to hear the dialogue that's going on, people will switch off straight away. So sound is really important. What do you use on your smartphone for capturing sound, Rob?
So the mic that I use, I've actually got here. It's the Rode Video Mic Me. So this plugs into, I don't know if you can see that. If I take that windshield off, it's a TRRS plugin. So that's basically your headphone socket on your phone that goes straight into it. And you've got the windshield as well. If you're filming a bit outdoors, you have to have a window open, that kind of thing. And that goes straight into the phone. That's a really good clear shotgun microphone, so that will get sound directly ahead of it rather than picking up loads of sounds around. So if you're doing a monologue, something like that, or you're doing a talking to camera piece like this, then it's a really, really good microphone to have because it will get all the sound nice and clear. And Rode is a really, really like high-end quality mic setup, and that mic costs about £45. Equally, if you don't want to spend loads of money or you can't, you've got lav microphones like this Boya BYM1, which is what I use. And it's got an insane wire. It's about 5 meters long, this wire. And on my channel, there's a video about it, and I show you how to make a boom mic as well. So if you've got a scene, maybe you're doing in a bedroom or sofa, particularly if you're just doing this on your own or it's just a couple of you, you can kind of hook up a broomstick or something. You can hang it across your room to where you are, and then you can have that wrapped around the wire up the pole, and then have the microphone actually hanging off the end of it. So then you've got really good sound right in front of you. And that microphone costs, I think it's £12–15. You can get them sometimes cheaper on eBay than Amazon, places like that. So I would always check eBay as well if you want to get some really cheap gear to get good sound on your phone as well. And also remember, if you're in a room that's quite echoey, like in my study or my bathroom, if I'm doing scenes there and that kind of thing, you have to be aware. So try and put like towels, rugs, that kind of thing on the floor out of sight, so that can kind of absorb the sound as well. So you're not getting all this echoey kind of horribleness.
Some of those mics are very affordable, aren't they? And I use Rode mics myself, some of the more expensive ones, but even those little video mics that they produce are just incredible for the money and give really good quality. But let's say you haven't got one of those with you. What other tips have you got on how you can get good sound with just the basic smartphone?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, I'm just literally using the headphones from my phone, and it's got a microphone as well. And I actually did a test on this back when I first started my channel to see what the sound would be like with this to make a short film. And it's surprisingly good, actually. So if you want to make sound that's good, but you don't have the money to go and get external microphones, like you mentioned, then you can totally use a headset for your iPhone. Put that microphone nice and close to wherever the sound's going to be coming from. Obviously, if it's a big show you're doing, maybe there's several people in there, you need to make sure you kind of strategically place that so that you're going to be able to get that kind of sound nice and clear. But you can definitely get a good quality sound with your own headset from the phone. And if you're doing, again, like monologues, smaller kind of scale things like that, you can get really clear sound on this. Just do some practicing, place it in a few different places, like a bit closer, a bit further away, see where you can get the right kind of distance to your voice as well. And you can definitely get good sound from this as well.
So again, Filmic Pro, like any professional software, gives you the ability to control the sound levels and adjust sound levels within the package. And it's really important to monitor and to adjust your sound to avoid it getting too loud and distorting or dropping down to a point where it's very difficult to hear. I think some of the biggest mistakes I see with sound are where there's a very, very quiet dialogue and then suddenly you're being blasted out of your seat by really loud music or something like that going on. So overall, across the entire stream or the entire video, it's really important to get those sound levels consistent. Now, another big factor in good quality video is lighting. And without light, there is no video. So what do you find works best for you, Rob?
Oh man, I have so many problems with lighting, but there's some really easy fixes, luckily, once you know what you're doing. So I would say the number one thing is, if possible, to put yourself near a window where there's going to be plenty of daylight. So film it during the daytime if you can. That way you're going to get nice bright natural light, and it's going to be quite soft as well. So if you use something like a lamp, it can work really well from your own home. But sometimes it's a bit too bright and you'll get like really like a lot of extra overexposure, that kind of thing. But if you use daylight, like I've got a lot of daylight coming from the window to my left, then that brightens up the whole place and it just looks very professional, I suppose. Other things you can do is, like I say, you can use lamps. So you can place that in, say here you've got the shadow behind me, or on this side rather. You could put a lamp just to that side so you can get rid of the shadows and things like that, so you can make it nice and clear, and it kind of just is distracting for the audience, and that way they're only going to be looking at you. So if you've got kind of terrible lighting, which sometimes it's unavoidable, we can have some bad lighting if you're at home, you haven't got any funds to kind of, you know, get professional lighting. There are ways around it, and I think lamps, lights that you have in your flat, certain lights and lamps and bulbs will have different temperatures, color temperatures. So if they're a warmer temperature, they'll be slightly orangey yellow, but what you really want is a cooler temperature. So you want something that surrounds, I don't know if this means anything to people really, but about 5,500 Kelvin, which is daylight temperature. So it's quite white to the eye, and that will give you a nice clear kind of image. So if you can get something that's more daylight, more kind of a white light coming out of your bulb, that'll be the best thing. Or even if you have to buy a light bulb, they're really cheap. Got one today, or two for £5 from Sainsbury's. Just put it in and that gives you a nice clear light, rather than what some, especially if you're renting, the lamps and the bulbs in your flats will have. You get something that's kind of bright and will show you off well and be near a window so you can get good daylight. And also, and I almost forgot to mention, you can get cheap reflectors. I got one for £5 off of Gumtree. So you can put that somewhere strategically as well. So if you're getting a lot of shadows on one side, or you can get a board and wrap it in tin foil, something like that. So you can just kind of take the shadow and the darkness off one side of your face.
So some key points I would throw in at that point are exposure, making sure you set your exposure correctly so that it's not too bright, not too dark. And where you can do that manually, cameras have a tendency to, in automatic, suddenly change brightness from very bright and overexposed to very dark. And it can be something as simple as a vehicle going past outside through the window and just a little reflection or just a little bit of movement in the frame, and suddenly everything for no reason suddenly goes really dark in the image and it just looks really bad on screen. Setting your white balance manually if you can is also very important. We heard from Rob there that daylight coming in through the window is very blue in colour, whereas an older tungsten light bulb is going to produce very yellow light. And the worst thing you can do really is mix those two in the same space. Your eyes and your brain will adapt to that automatically and you won't even notice the difference. But the sensor on a camera is much more sensitive to that. So you'll end up getting yellow patches on the skin and blue coming from a different direction. And overall, the whole image will just look very strange and horrible. Check your focus as well. If you've got anyone that can help you, stand in position and get them to set the focus for you in that position and lock it off, unless you're planning to be moving the camera around throughout the shoot. Autofocus systems, some of those can be very good on cameras, others not so good. But whenever you use autofocus, what you tend to find happening is this hunting around. As the image moves, the camera will hunt around trying to find focus, and you'll get these little movements within the screen that really just make your video look fairly amateurish. Are there any other big things you can think of to watch out for, Rob?
Yes, there is one that I really need to talk to you guys about, and that is power on your phone. If there's one thing that people know, is that iPhones are terrible for the most part with battery. You know, you make a couple of texts and they're going like blah, 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 blah. So you want to make sure that you got something like a power bank, which is this. A lot of people have this anyway. Basically, it'll give you an extra 1, 2, 3, 4 charges depending on what you've bought. This one is about £25, and it will give you 4 charges. So you just turn it on here. and you get the blue lights there, and it will show you how many charges you've got left. So I've got 3 charges left on that. So if you're doing a play that's basically over 10-20 minutes, you're probably going to need one of these. And if you don't have one, ask your friends if they got one. Again, go on eBay, Gumtree, people will be selling these. And that will mean that you can film without having to worry about battery, because the last thing you want, especially if you're making a play that's on a live stream, for example, is for the phone to cut out, which is very, very possible if it's a long play. So get a power bank, or if you're near a power source, plug in your phone so it's constantly on charge, because that would be a disaster, but it's very easily avoided.
Yeah, it's a good point, especially when live. I mean, our cameras tend to run off mains, low voltage power supplies, but we'll also put a battery in the camera, and those batteries can last up to 5 hours. But anyway, carry on.
I suppose one of the main tips is to learn about angles, camera angles. So whether you are looking at on YouTube, something like that, it's something that you really need to think about, because if you're got something that's really distracting, for example, with your camera angle, maybe it's kind of like looking a bit too up at someone, so you're getting a bit under their nose or something a bit gross. You want to make sure you've got really good, clear shots of whoever's in it.
Yeah, getting the lens up to the same level as your eye can be really useful for getting good composition. But like any rules, it can be broken. And if you want to move the camera to a different position for artistic reasons, that's just as valid. And you know your show, you know what's going to be happening within the show, so frame it accordingly and think about your composition.
Essentially, what you really want to make sure is that you don't cut your head off. So especially if there's a lot of movement in your scene as well, you don't want bits where you're going like this and they're missing all the emotion or any kind of feeling that you're putting into it. So make sure that you're nice and clean and shot. If it's something that's quite close up, like a monologue, you can do something a bit further away than this, but something that's kind of chest up so you can see your emotion, see your face close up. And remember, it's on a phone as well, so you can get really like impersonal with someone and get really in their face. So you can create something quite unique there. And if it's multiple people in a scene, you know, you can get a handheld rig that you put around your phone that kind of clamps in, which is what I'm using now, which is a Ulanzi U-Rig Pro. And you basically hold it aside, the camera's clamped in there, your phone, and you can just use that to go to one person to another. So maybe it's something that's a bit more gritty, there's a bit more action in your play, in your show. You could use something like that, and that way you'll take the tremors off of your phone. So rather than having it just handheld and your hands kind of going like that, and you think it's stable, but it's not, because when you look at it back, it's very, very shaky. But if you get, like now, if you get a little rig for it, very, very cheap, you can make something quite nice. Or if you've got like a little tripod, a handheld tripod, you can just clip it in there to get rid of handshakes as well. And also things that are distracting. If you're filming it at home, studio it's not too much of an issue, but if you're filming at home, don't have anything crazy distracting in there. So if you got stuff, you know, if this was a scene like this is an interview, for example, I wouldn't have a pet cat sitting on there necessarily, because that would be distracting. Or a painting of some sort that's kind of a bit unusual and crazy. Try and think about what the audience is seeing. Is it relevant to your scene? Yes, it's at home, but make sure it looks as professional as possible, because if you've got something very distracting and that's very unrelated to what you're doing, probably people for the next 5-10 minutes of your show are going to be thinking about that thing that's behind you. So try and make it nice and clear what's behind you and make it quite relevant if you can.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that sort of thing a lot of the time, where you maybe are distracted and are actually looking at what's going on the TV in the background, where somebody's forgotten to switch that off.
Yeah, so make sure that your shots are nice, clean and professional and relevant. But whilst we're talking about that, Andy, I have a question for you, because I haven't used this yet. What do you think about green screen, using that?
Yeah, green screen, I mean, it can look fantastic. It's used on all the big Hollywood feature films that you see, to oftentimes to have a small real set and supplement that by having big cityscapes in the background with CGI'd in. So it can be used to great effect, but done badly, poor green screen can just look really tacky and horrible. We use green screen a lot of the time. The Ironworks Studio has a big green screen cyclorama and a full lighting rig available. Lighting is very, very important for green screen work, to get that right, and having some very capable software to be able to chroma key that image together and actually put those backgrounds in without it looking really messy. However, if the budget's available, I'd probably choose in most cases to build a set rather than use a green screen set. I think it oftentimes will just look that bit nicer. Now I just want to cover a few points on streaming. If you're streaming from your mobile phone, there will be some limitations either on the phone or with the apps that you're using there. And certainly if you really looking to up your game and get better quality, you may be looking at buying into a DSLR, DSLM type camera where you're going to get far nicer images from that. But then you need to get the right camera that has a good clean output that you will then have to take in using a capture card into something like a laptop. And there are free packages available, and probably the most widely used one that's very popular with streamers is something called OBS. You'll have a steep learning curve on that in trying to figure out how to set it up and use that and connect it. But there are plenty of tutorials out there online to help with that. The content delivery network that you're going to stream to, such as YouTube or Facebook or maybe Fringe's own paywall system, they'll be able to give you the best settings to use within your software, and something importantly called a stream key, which is kind of the special piece of code that directs it to exactly the right place to make sure it gets onto their servers. Your connectivity is important too, especially if you're going to be streaming on a phone or from home, making sure one, you've got enough data on your phone, and if you've got a really patchy broadband connection that's dropping in and out or very congested, it is going to give you problems trying to stream that out. So you need to make sure you've got enough bandwidth available to be able to stream. And again, your content delivery network will recommend various settings in terms of bit rates, and that's the quality effectively of how much data you can send in to get a good quality image, as long as you can get it across your broadband connection. Now we use very high resilience, very high bandwidth connections, and we spread the load across anything up to 4 internet connections when we're doing streaming from Ironworks Studio. That allows us to make sure if any one of those goes down or gets congested, the signal still goes out and is still a very high quality sort of guaranteed way of making sure that we get a very good quality stream out that it's perhaps not so easy to do at home. So if you really want to up your production game, then we can move up, if you've got the budget, into hardware devices like this A10 Mini Pro. This is a fantastic little vision mixer switcher and a hardware encoder for streaming. This allows you to put multiple cameras in and switch between them, and takes care of all the streaming, so you're not relying on a laptop which might crash halfway through your live stream or the battery go flat, etc. So a great piece of kit that for £500, £600, £700 is actually doing the job of something that would have cost tens of thousands of pounds just a few years back. And don't forget that Ironworks Studios is there and available to you. We can fully crew and supply all the equipment and technical expertise to make this happen and to turn your production ideas into a reality. So I hope you found some of this useful. Again, my links are below if you want to check out any of my technical videos or behind the scenes video. And Rob, have you got any final Fringe tips for people?
As the big tip, use social media to plug the hell out of your shows. If it's online now, especially so, because people, you know, even when the Fringe is live, people will pick up flyers, that kind of thing, but people are on their phones 24/7. So make sure you Insta the hell out of your shows, tweet the hell out of your shows, put on Facebook, spread the word. Don't be shy about it. Don't be embarrassed about it or anything like that. Just go for it. If people don't want to, have that on their Facebook feed, they can mute you for a while, unfollow you, whatever. Just push your show and enjoy the Fringe for everything it's worth, because it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's about all we've got time for today. So thanks again for joining us, Rob.
Thank you for having me, man. It's been a lot of fun. It's good to talk to everyone. Yes, do check out Smartphone Filmmaker YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram as well and Twitter. And, even past the Fringe as well, if you want to make short films, it's great for that kind of stuff as well. And learning how to make and create on a budget. So have an amazing Fringe, everyone. I wish you all the best. I know what it's like working your socks off to produce the best show you possibly can. And now you're doing it all online, so it's even more interesting these days. And I know you'll smash it. Have a good time and enjoy the experience.
And thanks everyone else. Enjoy the Fringe.